Prioritized in the Global Digital Compact and gaining momentum as one of the UN Secretary General's high-impact initiatives, DPI is delivering impact at scale. It is turning possibilities into realities and empowering countries to transform our planet and people's lives all the way to the last mile. From Malawi to Finland to Brazil, DPI is a transformative people-first movement. This movement recognizes the need for safeguards as an upfront necessity, not an afterthought. Embedding universal principles across every step of the DPI design and implementation journey ensures that the rights of people are respected and preserved and our planet is protected. This includes in Malawi, where 97% of Malawians have a legal digital ID being used to access services. This adoption saved the government $43 million in annual payments that were previously made to ghost beneficiaries. The same in Finland, where the X-Road data ecosystem offers over 800 public digital services and has scaled as a public good around the world. With a commitment to safeguards in the Brazilian digital government strategy, the Rural Environment Registry is helping to achieve the goal of the Paris Agreement by reforesting 12 million hectares and creating interoperability between stakeholders and infrastructure across natural resources. But it is not just Malawi, Finland, and Brazil. The impact of DPI is growing, with more and more countries leveraging the transformative power of digital public infrastructure. To keep the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals, DPI represents a fundamental pivot that involves everyone, everywhere, and that includes you. Let's work together to build a safe and inclusive digital future for all.
Wonderful. Great to see everybody here. There's a lot of interest in this event, a lot of anticipation, excitement. Good afternoon. I'm Adam Lupel, IPI's Vice President, and it is indeed my pleasure to welcome you all to this very special event, Digital Public Infrastructure. What's next after the Global Digital Compact? I'd like to thank the UN Office of the Secretary General's Envoy on Technology and UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, for their partnerships on this event. We have a tremendous program here, a lot to get through, so stick with us. I'm sure everyone has been following. The Global Digital Compact is indeed a landmark document that sets out the objectives, principles, commitments, and actions necessary to achieve an inclusive, open, sustainable, fair, safe, and secure digital future for all. The compact is based on principles of inclusivity and rooted in the 2030 Agenda and the drive to accelerate progress on achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. In today's world, universal and meaningful connectivity is pivotal to unlocking the true potential of emerging technologies for all humanity. In order to do that, in order for our digital future to be one that benefits us all, a commitment to develop agreed-upon safeguards for inclusive, responsible, safe, secure, and user-centered digital public infrastructure is necessary. But this presents some challenges. Like so much, it is easier said than done. Expanding digital cooperation across the globe presents a whole host of collective action problems, touching on issues from funding to human rights, data privacy, and cybersecurity, among others. What is indeed required is a whole of society approach. Meeting the challenge of achieving the development of resilient, safe, inclusive, and interoperable digital public infrastructure will require a truly collaborative effort from governments, civil society, the private sector, and international organizations, that is to say, a genuinely inclusive, multi-stakeholder approach. The promise is great. The challenges are vast. Fortunately, we have some of the best on the case, and we are very fortunate that they are with us here today. And with that, I am very honored to introduce, in some sense, I'd say the man of the hour. Welcome back to IPI, Undersecretary General Amandeep Singh Gill, the Secretary General's Envoy on Technology. Please, Undersecretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you for that kind introduction. And thank you to IPI for hosting this event. You underlined the importance of the moment, the adoption of the Global Digital Compact on Sunday as part of the Pact for the Future, and the Declaration on Future Generations. So within this momentous development, there is a set of landmark developments. And one of them is a recognition, a universal recognition of the power of these digital commons, the digital public goods, digital public infrastructure, open source tools and services, to drive a more inclusive digital future, a more safe and sustainable inclusive future. We all know how this conversation has been evolving. There was a significant development when the G20 endorsed a framework on DPS. So what's happened on Sunday is that understanding across 20 nations has been spiraled into an understanding across 193 nations. So I just want us to take a moment to reflect on the significance of this. The broader, one of the broader possibilities from the Global Digital Compact is bending technology development to the public interest. This is not anti-market, but it's more like shaping the market. And I think this has been the approach in developing this particular framework that we've done together with UNDP and also with the help of 44 global experts, multi-stakeholders who have embodied experience, who have the lived experience of DPIs in various forms, in various contexts, in various regions. And we also worked with a small group of international organizations through the International Organization Consultative Group, not only within the UN system, so our sister agencies, the ITU, for example, but also the World Bank, OECD, and others. So this is really, truly a collective effort. Now, in the GDC, there is a recognition of the transformative potential of DPIs, but also a recognition of the risks that are associated with DPIs. So what are these risks? They could be system-wide surveillance, mass surveillance, there could be data breaches and exclusion. So without safeguards, we will not get the societal trust to drive DPIs at scale. So we need to have this framework. This is an essential foundation for moving forward on DPIs and for DPIs to act as a catalyst for the sustainable development goals. Now, this framework, and you have a report on your seats, but there's also a QR code. And that QR code takes you to an interactive tool. So it's not just text that's there, but what you're looking at is a knowledge framework, a tool that different participants in the DPI ecosystem can enter into. They can don personas like of a public official or a civil society organization, and then look at what are the relevant risks, what are the principles that should guide their approach, and what are the relevant examples from different parts of the world that can help them mitigate those risks. And the framework also contains a set of KPIs, key performance indicators, that help us measure progress on safety and inclusion. Because DPIs are not static. We already see with digital IDs, there are versions that are coming up that improve upon the previous version. So we want this to remain a living tool. And that's where community engagement will be important. That is where in-country implementation and learning from the in-country implementation would be important. And that's where UNDP will play a very important role because it has a global footprint. And we would also work with other agencies, other actors, such as the World Bank, which again has a global footprint. So we have a gold standard in a sense, humble brag, but that's not a fixed standard. We'll improve it, and we will work with a broader ecosystem. So I want to thank all our partners who've helped us bring this forth. We've played the role of an incubator in a sense for this, nothing more. And I also want to thank our funders for this, so Co-Develop, Madhukar, and our other potential funders and supporters for their support. And as we take it forward, your continued support would be crucial. And I'm really, truly grateful for that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Joachim Steiner, the administrator of the UNDP, will be here shortly. We forgive him. It took me 45 minutes to get across the street earlier today, so I think it's part of the hour. So we're going to go right into our next part of the program and welcome him to the podium later. What we have is a series of lightning talks, quick talks here from the podium before we get to the panel. So first up is Her Excellency Veronica Nduva, Secretary General of the East African Community. And as I was commenting to her earlier, this gives me the opportunity to say something that I hope is quite common in a couple of years. Madam Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Very happy to be here. Thank you so much for this great invitation. Thank you so much for the warm remarks that we've had. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to lead you down an imagination. Imagine a world with 8 countries, 320 million people, a combined GDP of 300 million USD. Imagine East Africa community. This is where we identify, exchange, and pay, all on digital platforms. The EAC has a customs union, it has a common market, and an aspiration towards a monetary union and a political federation. So what are we left with? We are striving to include, we want to trust, we want to develop, we want to secure. Why does it matter? In East Africa alone, estimations are that the DPIs could create over 4.5 million jobs and penetrate about $2.6 billion in economic growth in just the next 6 years by 2030. With over 320 million people, most of them youth in the EAC, many without access to banking and legal IDs. Imagine a young woman who owns a small business at the Namanga border between Tanzania and Kenya. May I pause to say that 60% of intra-regional trade at the borders is conducted by women through MSMEs. Or a farmer in Rwanda, both now able to access financial services, engage with government, expand opportunities through mobile technology. This transformation is driven by DPI, and it's not just about technology, it's about unlocking the social and economic potential for East Africa. When we talk about shrinking the digital divide, when we talk about leapfrogging, this is it. The DPI's impact in East Africa. In August, just the other day, we held the first Digital Lenders Forum where partner states have agreed to work together. Currently, I wish to introduce to you the East African payment system. The 8 countries of East Africa have different currencies. So we have currency convergence with the East African payment system. It's about facilitating cross-border trade in local currencies, supporting regional trade. And though we haven't realized our full potential yet, we are in the process of doing so. We are in the process of upscaling, and we have developed a proper data governance policy framework. Allow me to also just let you know at a country level the strides we have made and why we are eager to join the 50 in 5 as a bloc to ensure that all of the countries are on board. Kenya alone has 116 mobile penetration rate. Tanzania, 85 mobile penetration rate. 51 million, 25 million users. Mobile money services, a cornerstone of financial inclusions. Kenya's leading technology, M-Pesa, boasts 30 million active users with almost 99.9% of adult population. Tanzania, 33 million mobile money accounts. Uganda, 24 million active mobile money account. E-government services, transforming how our citizens engage with their governments. Kenya's e-citizen platform, 5,000 digital services on a click. Tanzania payments platform, facilitating real-time transaction, 1.5 million. Rwanda, Irembo government platform. The most important thing I want to leave you with, through our customs union, the East African community is the only regional bloc in the community of Africa, that is the continent, that is integrated through a single customs territory. All revenue systems are interoperable. All movement of cargo within the EAC fully monitored from Burundi to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, from Rwanda to Mombasa in Kenya. Sharing of information. How long has a truck stopped? How long, what is it doing there? When will it move? Why has it taken long to offload? Use of digital IDs. We are already using digital IDs in Rwanda, Kenya, Burundi. So despite all this, we have a lot of challenges to overcome. The interoperability across cross-border payment systems is still very limited. With regulatory barriers such as different licensing regimes and know your customer requirements, all these hinder a seamless financial flow. Therefore, international cooperation is essential to overcoming these challenges. We have partnerships with organizations such as the World Bank, the GIZ. I was told it's called GIZ, not the GIZ. So we have great partnership with the World Bank, the GIZ, the Gates Foundation, and the Africa Development Bank, very instrumental in ensuring our DPI initiatives cross the flow. So what is our call to action? What do we have? We have the political will from the regional presidents, and from me, as you've heard, the first female Secretary General of the East African Community, the third Kenyan in the last 25 years, and I'm happy to push this forward also as the youngest and therefore more adaptable to technology. In November, our heads of state will be hosting a dedicated session to host DPIs with a special emphasis on digital payment systems. And I wish to note that this is a great achievement for me, realizing the first 100 days of my leadership, ensuring that there is a conversation at that level. We have the plans, the intention, the enabling environment, and digital innovation. So what do we need? Sustainable, blended financing for open and secure, interoperable, inclusive, revitalizing, incentivizing the private sector, MNOs and banks, widening the stakeholder ecosystem, targeted innovations, and building a sustainable pool of talent from which to draw from for digital hubs and school-based clubs. Work with me, let us leave no one behind.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And now we're going to turn directly to our co-host, Akim Steiner of the United Nations Development Program. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I want to begin by saying, Madam Secretary General, I feel the pressure, both technologically, but also in your very gifted presentation just now. And I feel so excited by when I hear a friend from Kenya speak with such pride, but also with such figures about what is happening in the region. So may the force be with you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon we have come together for many different reasons, but one of them will in a moment bring Amandeep and I also together here in presenting to you something that we believe is another illustration of how quickly the world is not only appreciating the need for something, but is willing to also come together to act on it. In the old days, we used to build roads and railways, and we needed to have guardrails. We needed to have, if you want, the speed limits that allow us to survive traveling on those highways of yesteryear. Today, we are looking at a world, and we just listened to some of the numbers, which I did not know, so I am really quite intrigued by them, as to how quickly that digital public infrastructure that we see emerging across the world, in some places faster, in some slower, and some not at all yet. So all of this is part of the reality we're trying to deal with. And what we are looking at together at the moment is to find the kind of digital public infrastructure that has the principles, policies, and institutions that keeps the interests, safety, and rights of people at the very center. Much more easily said than done in a world that is not necessarily predisposed to work together on a global level on many issues right now. But here we are. This is the essence of the DPI Safeguards Initiative, and as an outcome of the initiative, which we have been stewarding along with Amandeep Gill and his team, the Universal DPI Safeguards Framework offers the foundational principles and actionable processes and practices. This is very much UN speak for how we can actually agree to do some things together while we disagree on what we will not yet do together. But that's why we have processes. That's why we have principles. Through them, we get closer to actually being able to act together. And I make a little bit of fun of the terms, but sometimes when we meet at the UN General Assembly in the context of a summit of the future, people are often so, how can I say, almost principally skeptical. But this is what multilateralism is all about. You have to learn to come together despite differences, despite very different departure points. And so we're actually quite proud that we have managed to arrive at a point where we have these safeguards framework ready to present to you. First, commitment. Governments must commit to the importance of inclusive, safe, and equitable digital systems. Not that difficult anymore in today's world, but easier said than done. Trust and equity are the cornerstones of a progressive society, and without safeguards, the risk creating systems that exclude vulnerable populations or violate fundamental rights. Second, capital. We just heard sustainable finance, the kind of investments that are needed. Financial investment is critical not only for building DPI, but more importantly for ensuring that robust safeguards are in place. No single entity can do this alone. Actors must work together and leverage their financial resources to support sustainable, secure, and inclusive DPI that serves everyone. Third, capacity. Skilled teams and empowered civil society and expert technical support and beyond are crucial for the effective implementation and governance of DPI safeguards. It is about going beyond mere technical expertise and fostering an ecosystem of collaboration and accountability where actors share knowledge and resources. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, just as a robust firewall shields vital systems from threats, these DPI safeguards form the digital backbone that upholds resilience, equity, and trust, ensuring a thriving and secure digital future for all. And now it's time to unveil what we have all been working towards, and hopefully all of you looking forward towards, the Digital Public Infrastructure Safeguards Framework. Amandeep, please join me. And to thank you so much, Amandeep.
Thank you, Dr. Yes, absolutely. And thank you to the teams done a lot of hard work.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Congratulations to everyone. And there's the QR code, which I believe will download the safeguards for you. So we're going to return quickly to our lightning talks. Lightning quick talks before we get to our panel. And next up, we have Her Excellency Paula Ingabire, Minister of Information, Communication Technology and Innovation, Rwanda. Please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Mandeep, Madam Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's good evening at this point. It's an honor for me to join you here today as we deliberate on the future of digital public infrastructure and its role in fostering inclusive and sustainable societies. As we look ahead, all our conversations will be rooted in the potential of DPIs and the common responsibility that we have to render DPIs useful, secure, safe, and inclusive for the common good. Today, and I think as I walked in, the Secretary General of the East African Community was giving a highlight of the different DPI initiatives that we have across the continent. And Rwanda has not been left behind because we've witnessed significant transformation in our DPI efforts. Our national ID system, integrated with our online portal for government services, Irembo, now provides over than 90% of Rwandans access to all essential public services online, ranging from civil registration to land transfers. This has resulted in substantial reduction in both the time and cost for citizens to access government services. And additionally, over 70% of our adult population is using digital financial services through our mobile money and digital platforms that have boosted financial inclusion and economic empowerment. The GDC outlines a framework for cooperation, security, and protection of human rights, and has facilitated the growth of DPI. But now, as the theme today stands, the pressing question before us is, what next? The future of digital public infrastructure lies in our ability to create systems that are not only robust and secure, but equitable and accessible for all. We must prioritize digital inclusion, ensuring that every individual, regardless of location and background, thrives in the digital economy. This requires continued investments in infrastructure, digital literacy, devices, and also ethical governance of emerging technologies like AI. Moving forward, our goal must extend to the reach of DPI, especially the communities that have been left out, while ensuring the privacy, data protection, and cybersecurity are central to that expansion. We believe that the initiative of 15.5 DPI for people and planet will accelerate the adoption of DPI around the world. Moreover, collaboration between governments and the private sector is crucial. Together, we must strive to build digital infrastructure that fosters innovation, promotes privacy, and is secure. The next phase is going to be defined by our collective efforts and action and our commitment to harness technology for good. Strong partnerships, digital connectivity, and human capital development will be required across different countries. With these efforts, we are confident that DPI can become one of the engines of economic growth and a vital means of fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals. Together, we have the opportunity to shape the future of digital public infrastructure and goods that serve humanity as a whole, bridging digital divides and empowering everyone to participate fully. We will reinforce our commitment to transforming the GDC ideas into real practices. And SG, I think this is a commitment that is not coming from Rwanda, but most of the countries that are represented here, while also ensuring that the benefits of digital technologies are shared by all. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We will continue on with Mr. Kashifu Inuha Abdullahi, Director General, National Information Technology Development Agency of Nigeria. Sir, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Excellencies, and thank you for inviting me. I think for me, digital transformation is dramatically changing our world, offering immense potential benefit for the well-being and advancement of humanity, our societies, and our planet. And also it holds the promise of accelerating the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal. But this can never be achieved in silos. Countries need to work together and cooperate. And also we recognize the challenges it poses on countries, especially developing countries who has pressing needs with limited resources. But the question is, it is not about technology, because sometimes in this conversation, always we talk about the technology, but it is about the people. And also, when you talk about people, you need to look at what are the needs of those people and design the technology for them. In Nigeria, we have the commitment from our government. The president mandated our ministry to accelerate the diversification of the Nigerian economy by enhancing productivity in critical sectors such as agriculture, e-health, healthcare, and finance, and many more. And also, he wants us to do this through technological innovation. And when you look at digital public infrastructure, digital transformation is a journey. It's not something one-off that you can do it. And most countries started this journey organically. Same with Nigeria and many developing countries. We started the journey organically many years, but we do investment in silos. What DPI will help us to do is to consolidate that and create the backbone that will make things to be more inclusive and interoperable. So in Nigeria, we have huge investment in identity. We have investment in payment system. We have one of the robust payment infrastructure in the world. Because I remember when I was with the Central Bank of Nigeria like 5 years ago, when we started the T+1 and instant payment, many developed countries were not doing that, which I believe some of them, they are still struggling to do instant payment interbanks. But we have the infrastructure in Nigeria. What we are lacking is the data exchange platform, how to seamlessly integrate and exchange data across different IT infrastructure we have in the country. And that's where we think we'll learn from those who make an advanced stage in the area of DPI. But for me, it is not about bringing technology that works somewhere to another country, because no two countries are the same. Every country is unique. They have different needs for the people, and also the technology is to meet the people, especially in terms of delivering a delightful solution for what can be a stressful life event experience. For example, you want to buy a car, you want to buy a house, you don't need to move from one office to another. You can do that through mobile phone or your computer. So these are the kind of solutions we want to build, and we believe that with our uniqueness and uniqueness of each country should have its own tailor-made solution. So this standard like this, the framework will help us to have a best practice, to have standard that we can learn from, but we also need to build our own, and also we explore to either have a PPP arrangement on building it, or to have a government-driven. But I think the best in a country like Nigeria cannot be government full-time. So we look at how can we have a PPP arrangement. So my minister is discussing with UNDP also to set the DPI Center of Excellence in Nigeria so that we can build solutions that can last, because one of the challenges we are having in most of developing countries is sometimes we use IT as a contract base. Someone will just come with a technology to dump it on you. And in most cases, it never works. So we are looking at having the center that will craft our strategy, will have our national architecture of the DPI, then we start implementing within the country. So thank you for the opportunity, and we are open to learn from you as well. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. There's such a rich presentations already, but I will forego comment and continue on with His Excellency Luis Gallegos, Chairman of the Global Initiative for Inclusive ICTs, G3 ICT. Ambassador, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I have to thank the Undersecretary for his invitation, and also UNDP, and it's an honor to be in the Institute for Peace. I come in the name of civil society, and this is something I have to say G3ICT welcomes the opportunity to participate in the Digital Public Infrastructure Initiative, and it remains open for collaboration. And we'll be happy to follow up on any way to strengthen the DPI initiative. I had the honor of chairing the negotiations of the CRPD. And 20 years ago, we thought that accessibility for persons with disability was an issue not only of the visible disability in the infrastructure, but it was also the accessibility to technologies of information and communication. So Article 9 of the convention mandates those governments that have signed and have ratified the convention of their obligations to make it accessible to 1.3 billion people who are disabled. We normally multiply that number by 2 because the impact group is directly not only family members, but social, medical infrastructure. So we're talking about 3.9 billion people. But as you see very well, I'm aging. I'm also interested in aging and longevity and the capabilities of having this accessibility for 1 billion people who are aging. And in 26 years, we will be 2 billion people who are aging. So that is an extraordinary number of persons who will depend on information and communication technologies and all types of artificial intelligence that we are looking into today. The effort is to make that an opportunity for all. The Global Digital Compact presents a great opportunity as it recognizes the fundamental rights of persons with disabilities to access and aging, to access disability resources on an equal basis with others. For DPI implementation to be inclusive and foster a secure and trustworthy environment for all stakeholders, including persons who are aging and with disabilities, awareness of capacity building about existing digital accessibility solutions are essential. Indeed, today, digital accessibility technology, solutions, and standards are available, but are most often not prioritized by DPI projects and developments. To help remediate this challenge, G3ICT is ready to cooperate with DPI initiatives to develop the following support: the DPI Safeword Framework, the DPI Safeguards Resource Hub, in-country DPI safeguards and adoption. In conclusion, all collaboration from civil society and G3ICT and the Global Initiative on Aging are available, and we will be more than happy to collaborate in this effort that we hope will benefit billions of people who are on the sidelines of the capabilities that we offer our societies. It is an enormous challenge. The numbers are huge, but once you make technology accessible for persons with disability and aging, you probably will make them accessible for all. Thank you. We must not let anyone behind.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll now turn to our final lightning talk for our CV Marukar, CEO of Co-Develop. Please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. First of all, I must express my gratitude to UNDP and the UN Tech Envoy for leading this effort and the team that has come together to make all of this happen. A special call out to Sanjay, who's shepherded the whole process along with the UN team. So thank you very much. I had maybe 3 or 4 points that I wanted to share. The aspiration for this effort and beyond really comes, and the inspiration comes from what we saw with the climate process, the IPCC. And I think back about 1.5 years ago, when we first met, I said, what is the equivalent of the IPCC for DPI? What is it that brings all of us together to have this discussion, to build trust and work towards progress? And so I think the way we see it is this effort that we have, the report that we've launched today, is a first step in that process. And so there is the continued question of what we will do beyond this. And I think the question of today is what's next? Amandeep, as you said, the work in country will have to take over from now on. There is a global umbrella framing that helps us locate this conversation. And now it's time for us to figure out what we will do in country to make sure we all build safe and inclusive systems. The one other point I wanted to make was about risks. We've heard a lot about risks today. and we want to acknowledge the risks, I wanted to offer an alternate framing. Risks obviously exist in everything. Whether we sit down, put our next step forward, there's a risk of falling down, right? When we use our mobile phones, we have a risk of losing data and so on and so forth. What we are used to as human beings is trade-offs. We are constantly thinking about trade-offs. When I was 1 year old, if I put my first step forward, I might have fallen down, but there's a trade-off of can we walk, right? So in all of the systems we build, I want to urge all of us to think of trade-offs, because trade-offs is a very dynamic and it's an enabling framework. Risks are somewhat paralyzing. We want to recognize and acknowledge risks, but think about trade-offs. My colleague Matthew often reminds us that digitization happens at the speed of trust. And I think this effort is an important first step, important step that has brought all of us together on this journey. And we hope that we can continue to work with the UN and many other partners here to take this work to many countries around the world and hopefully think of what a COP process might look like for this kind of work. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. And now we'll invite our panelists up to the stage and we'll continue with our panel discussion. Thank you. Well, our presentations up to now is enough rich content to fill a whole event, but you are all in for a treat because we've got an excellent panel here to further the discussion. I have with me, let's see, yes, Anna Herkin, CEO of GIZ, Eileen Donahoe, Special Envoy and Coordinator for Digital Freedom, U.S. State Department, Cristina Duarte, Undersecretary General, UN Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, Carla Montese, Director for Digital Agenda and Green Deal at the Directorate General for International Partnerships at the European Commission, and Roger Voorhees, President, Global Growth and Opportunity Division at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Welcome to you all. Really happy to have you here. We're going to start with Anna, and we've collected some questions for each of you. And what we wanted to ask you, Anna, is maybe you could tell us a bit about why digital public infrastructure is so important for your partner countries and how GIZ is working with your partners on DPI safeguards, please.
Thank you very much. And I think we heard so many good examples why it is important for the partner countries. So I keep this short. And I always like to refer to the payments part because we know that we have three fundamentals of DPIs. And coming also from the finance sector, I always like to look at the payments. And we have about 1.4 billion people that have no access to banks and payment systems. So if we want to close that gap, I think it's quite obvious that we need to create digital payment systems that are secure and interoperable, because otherwise there will be no way that governments, people, businesses will be able to have access, particularly if they use different banks, different service providers. So I think this is quite clear. And then if you look at East Africa, where we are very active, they have also some very convincing numbers because it's estimated, and you know this much better, that DPIs could help create about 4.5 million jobs and generate I think it's 2.6 billion US dollars in economic growth by 2030. So I think the case is very clear why it's important. So what about GIZ? So at GIZ, I think what's really important to us is when we work with the partner countries, and you said it also, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. It's all local context. So what we do is we work very close with the partner countries, with the local communities, and also with the local digital ecosystem to make sure that we find solutions that really fit the partner countries. And one thing, perhaps what I love most about my job is what I would always refer to as the reverse innovation. And you mentioned M-Pesa, which is such a great innovation, that it's not only us supporting partner countries, but it's really learning also from you and this great innovation that the South can bring to all of us.
Fantastic. And thank you. And so maybe you could say a little bit more, if you don't mind, about the specific strategy that GIZ is using then to engage in a coordinated approach to assist the partners?
I mean, strategy and DPI is sort of, I think the strategy is that we know that DPI development is never linear. It's really complex. It goes up and down, a bit like the M-Pesa development, you know, it's sort of, you go one step before, you know, like 2 steps here, 1 step here. But I think what's important, and again, that's also looking at M-Pesa, coordination and cooperation is so important. And if you look at the case again, you had telecoms companies, you had banks, you had regulators, you had people, you had so many players that had to work closely together and cooperate. And I think this is what I would call like the bottom of our strategy, that we really work closely with the partners. And in terms of what we do is we do a lot of technical assistance, and we do it through GovStack program, which sort of adds to the macro layer of the DPI safeguards initiative. So GovStack is more like on the technical level. But what we also do, we do a lot of capacity building, because sometimes that gets a little lost in the discussion. If you want sustainable DPIs, you know, it's all about learning and education to keep track of the technical advancement, but also to make sure that you really find the local solutions that are important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think Madhukar said, you know, in answer, what's next? Working country is what next, and so important. And so these examples about you know, it's all about the local context, and you need to work closely with the partners is really such important. And sometimes around the UN, we're a headquarters organization, we have to be reminded about that. And one of the most exciting things about this time of year is we have so many people coming in and providing such concrete examples. So thank you so much for all of that. Excellent. Now, we will turn directly to my left to Eileen Donahoe, Special Envoy and Coordinator for Digital Freedom, U.S. State Department. Eileen, we wanted to ask you or recognize that the U.S. government really collaborated quite closely on the DPI Safeguards Initiative. And obviously, the Global Digital Compact recognizes the need for these safeguards. And so I wanted to ask you, in this conversation we're having about the global and the local, what role do you see for the multilateral system in advancing these commitments?
So first off, congratulations to everybody who was involved in this project. As Amandeep said, this is foundational. And I just think it's a major accomplishment. As was said, without trust, you don't get digitization. So we really embrace that concept. I'm going to start with an observation about what we see in multilateral fora over the past year, which is really remarkable, skyrocketing interest in this subject. It seems like it came out of nowhere. We've seen it in the G20 under India's and then Brazil's presidency, G7, many places in the UN. And I do think so much credit goes to OSED and UNDP. I think it's been a remarkable effort. The core rationale and animating energy for this and behind this DPI movement is really pretty simple to understand. The term digital public infrastructure has become shorthand for application of technology for development and the SDGs. And that is the topic in multilateral fora this year. Everybody knows we have digital divides, and if we don't focus on digital inclusion, those divides will increasingly get exacerbated. And simply put, we have to be very intentional, proactive, to make sure we don't end up thinking about AI and getting so excited about the innovation, but we forget about the inclusion part, because that really will turbocharge the digital divide problem. I'm also going to comment on the multilateral fora in the sense that my observation is that DPI, that concept is slightly more accessible, I think, to many people, especially international diplomats, because public infrastructure is a familiar concept and AI is a little bit abstract. And so once you talk about investing in DPI, you're really talking about investing in countries' development. And I think DPIs also slightly more directly signal digital inclusion than the AI conversation. So these two things are running in parallel, but I think that's a big part of how did DPI go to the top of the international agenda? I will say the fact that they're explicitly referenced in the GDC is a major accomplishment, as was said. Getting the 194 countries to agree on anything is a very big accomplishment. You want me to hold on US or turn to US?
Well, you're revealing my question already, that you know, you're revealing that we have a plant. Well, yes, so why don't you do that? Yes, we did want to ask you.
Okay.
What do you see as the way forward for the US government on this?
All right, so obviously, tech for development is front and center on our agenda, and tech AI for SDGs as well, as is obvious from the UN-led, a US-led consensus resolution on that exact topic, AI for SDGs last spring. I don't know if any of you were present, but yesterday we also announced basically a public-private partnership where we, together with our private sector, are investing $100 million in tech for development, and that was just announced yesterday. And so we're turning to that subject, the investment in the developing world. There's several core elements we see in DPI, even though, as has been said, this is kind of an emerging, evolving concept that will continue to shift through the implementation process. Our basic understanding of the definition is DPIs are a set of digital building blocks based on open, interoperable standards and specifications intended to facilitate delivery of public and private services at societal scale, anchored in respect for human rights, and aimed at driving development. And you know, we've heard several basic layers often included digital ID, digital payments, secure data transfers, and e-government. The most important takeaway from the United States, though, is we really do agree with this idea that the universal safeguard approach is essential and is the foundation for everything if you care about inclusion. And I do have to give credit, Amandeep and Rabab. I remember last year you announcing you launched this initiative for the framework and you brought it to conclusion 1 year later, and that is a major accomplishment. Why do we support this? Like everyone else, recognize the complex, different types of risks, whether it's to human rights and privacy, whether it is to the security of societies, because if they become dependent on DPIs for basic services, but those services are not reliable. And then also, ironically, DPIs come with risk to inclusion. If marginalized communities are even unintentionally not included in the benefits, in the data, or in the services. That's the bottom line practical point. If DPIs are not privacy protecting, rights respecting, reliable, safe, secure, and inclusive, people won't trust them. Last point, I want to mention the part of this that is sort of exciting to me as someone who has been focused on governance innovation, trying to figure out how do governing actors keep up with the pace of innovation and technology. And I really do see this DPI movement, and especially the Universal Safeguards movement, as a form of governance innovation, that basically the design, development, and deployment of the technology is going to become the vehicle for values-based governance. And that is a really exciting idea, that you can't have people clamoring for development and force them to trade off their privacy, their human rights, their security in exchange for inclusion in the digital transformation. These things have to go together, and DPIs, universal safeguards, is the means.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think this is really, these points you make about inclusion are so at the heart of everything, and that DPI is a shorthand for the application of tech for sustainable development. But it's not just innovation in technology, it's also innovation in governance, as you say, and we can't get just excited about the innovation and forget that inclusivity governance function part of it. So really important points. Thank you so much. Now, we're going to turn to Undersecretary General Cristina Duarte. It's been revealed to the room that you've had the questions in advance. But I'm still going I'm going to ask you, so we wanted to ask you, what role for your office do you see in bringing African countries together in the creation of regional strategies for safe and inclusive DPI? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, my dear colleague, Amandip. The role of OSA. In the last 4 years, me and my team, we undertook an exciting analytical process trying to understand, in short, why Africa is stuck. Why Africa has only delivered 12% of the 140 targets of the SCG. Why Africa has been losing $500 billion a year. Why Africa has 100 million children outside school. And that process was an amazing process because we start in 2020 by first realizing that the root cause of conflict and instability in Africa was the absence of the state. Weak country systems, weak institutions, and this is the reason we do not control our flows. And in this 4-year journey, starting with the absence of the state, we end up as DPI as a key success factor. You all in this room will ask me, what is the relationship between the absence of the state, the inability to the state to deliver social service, public goods, and DPI? When building this narrative and trying, of course, to have a deep conversation, let's say, with our African policymakers, which are our main stakeholders, we need to identify an entry point in terms of DPI. And of course, for us, was obvious that debt situation, the debt distress that Africa is under with right now would be a quite smart tactical entry point. And what we know, let's go very quickly to the debt narrative so you understand how come DPI lands in this narrative. As of today, there is a global narrative basically saying that Africans' debt distress, everybody knows, the numbers are there. And this same global narrative says that the main reason for African debt distress is over-indebtedness, the global narrative. And of course, when you accept that over-indebtedness is the main explanation for debt distress, it puts your mindset automatically looking only for short-term solutions. Only for short-term solutions. And in fact, this is the case. When you start discussing over-in-depth solutions, what we saw, a production of credit facilities from World Bank, ADBs, IMF, emergency facility, urgency facility, disaster facility. And of course, these are not the solutions. And this is the reason that in the past 30 years, Africa has undertaken 320 debt restructurings. And we still, again, getting prepared to do so. Where we need, this is the flow. Wrong. Africa is not over-indebted. Africa is in debt distress, everybody agrees, but Africa is not a continent over-indebted. The reason why Africa is in debt distress, actually our debt is very low, by the way. Don't buy this narrative, please. The reason that Africa is in debt distress, and I'll be very open, Amandip know that I'm very open, is because we do not control our economic and financial flows. This is the reason. As I said, Africa loses, and I had the opportunity to mention in a previous webinar, let's say, Africa is in debt distress because we do not control our economic and financial flows. And the tip of the iceberg is the fact that we lose $500 billion on, let's say, on an annual basis. If you accept that the main reason for the debt distress is a lack of control of economic and financial flows, it puts your mindset on long-term solutions because you do not control economic and financial flows in one day. You need a process. So when you have your mindset in the long-term path for solutions, you will realize that you need to control your flows and stop losing money. You need to build strong domestic resource mobilization systems, DRM systems. We need to put DRM system as the driver of financing for development in Africa, not ODA. Please, not ODA. Today, Africa finances itself in more or less 75%, 20 times more than ODA and almost 20 times more than FDI. So when you realize that to tackle the lack of control of economic financial flows, to tackle debt distress and putting yourself in a long-term mindset environment, you end up concluding that, okay, let's get together and build the domestic resource mobilization systems in general. And the only way to do that is by acknowledging that digital public infrastructure is the key success factor. Without DPA, you will not be able to do it. And Cape Verde, Rwanda are, I believe, strong examples. Once you use DPI, I'm about to finish, and I'm answering all two questions. All the two questions. Yes. So when you realize that you need to build DRM systems and DPI is the key success factor, let's say in this way, and we start seeing that digital public infrastructure is done in a certain way, if done in a certain way, is source of ownership for the country. Is source of ownership. We need to bring to political economy and political science to these conversations. Is more than, I believe, only technological issues. When you start building your DRM systems with DPI as a key success factor, feeding your ownership, you as a policymaker, you start enjoying policy space. When you enjoy policy space, you start controlling your deficit, how you finance your deficit. When you start controlling how you finance your deficit, you start reshaping the risk profile of your country, and you are put on a much better position in terms of debt management. As of today, there are some African countries that debt service is 25% of budget revenues, and education is 8%. We just need to reverse. 25% to education and 1% to debt service. And to do that, yes, DPI is not the solution, but is that critical piece in the equation. If you do not activate, no takeoff. As simple as that. No takeoff, of course. And all this narrative that my office has been developing is hoping that we'll be able to, everybody, to move from managing poverty to manage development. We are so rich, why you manage poverty in a rich continent? Back to you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And that really, I mean, as you say, we're talking about technology, we're talking about inclusion, and so bringing in the political economy into the conversation is so important. And it makes me want to plug another event later this week that we're fortunate that we're going to have the Undersecretary General, Cristina Duarte, at our event on Thursday. Do you not know this? You are scheduled to be speaking here in this room at 4 p.m. on Thursday in our event with the G20 and on the reform of global economic governance. So this, I mean, really is exciting.
That's a tough conversation.
Indeed. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now we will move to our next speaker. Carla Montese is the Director General for International Partnerships at the European Commission. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's not fair to come after after Cristina. What is your question? You don't have a question for me?
Okay. So, about the approach the EU is taking towards digital public infrastructure. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, okay. In any case, let me start also in my side to congratulate admin and with all the team for this huge work on DPI safeguard. We consider it to be part of the process, but it was a huge process, and really congratulations to all the team. it's clear that these DPIs seems to be crucial to drive the digital transformation worldwide. And allow me to say, when you ask about the concept that we have on this matter, that our priority of the priority in our international partnership with a partner around the world is also this digital transformation. So when we tackle digital transformation, we tackle and we support this with our strategy, the global gateway strategy. That is our investment package to support also the digital transformation, and that we translate into some digital economic package. So looking to the economy and the digitalization with each of the country. When we look to this digital transformation, of course, the idea is, and I will repeat the word that we were mentioning in the introduction, really to build a resilient, trusted, inclusive digital infrastructure. So this is our concept, and this is the concept that is part of our work and our support to the partner countries reaching this digital transformation. So when we DPI are at the core of what we are doing, when we combine with the open sources solution, could be open software, open data, open IE model, of course, what we want to try to achieve is transparency, fairness, and accessibility. And when we look to some concrete step, I would say that we are really supporting the different countries in their strategy. This is, I really want to support what was saying at the beginning. There is not one strategy, there is no one model, but we needed to accompanying the model that each country, each region will put in place, covering a large spectrum of action in an ecosystem approach, looking to the governance, looking to the regulatory framework, looking to the data center, looking also to the digital accessibility and connectivity. And of course, on this, we work with the partner countries, and we work also with all the multilateral system, and we are here in the UN system, but all the partners that will be in G7, G20, with ITU, with UNHCR, working all together in the multilateral system.
Wonderful, thank you. We also wanted to ask, maybe, do you have in practical terms we've heard some great examples from East Africa and such. Do you have in practical terms some examples from the EU on support for DPI at the European level?
Okay, some concrete example, but the Minister of Nigeria is here, so probably I will mention a big program that we have with Nigeria, 250 million for identity card. So in many countries, for example, in Africa, we are working with the digitalization of identity card. At the regional level, always in Africa, we have, for example, a program of 100 million safe digital booths, just to ensure the interoperability between the different systems on identity card between the different regions, but also supporting, developing the digitalized payment system in different countries. Looking to Latin America, El Salvador, Ivory, and the other countries, it's the development of, for example, of civil registry. That is one part. So I'm just to mention some of them, because globally all the package on digital reach now 1 billion euro for our contribution around the world. But these are just a few examples of more linked to DPI. Thank you.
Excellent, fantastic. We've got a lot to follow here, Roger. Excellent, thank you. So now we'll turn on to Roger Voorhees, President of Global Growth and Opportunity at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And so we just wanted to ask you if you could tell us about why the Gates Foundation is indeed focused on digital public infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's great to be here today. The foundation really started on this journey about a dozen years ago. And it entered the space because it looked around the world and said, why is it that half the world is unbanked? Why is it that more than half the world doesn't have a secure way to identify themselves? And what would it take to create a world where the banking system was designed not just for the middle class or rich people in the West, but it actually was designed in a way that included everyone? And that really started us on this journey, and we kind of wrestled with this idea that we believed that everyone would benefit from an economy that included everyone. But to do that, we actually started in a way that the Secretary General of the East African Community did, which was an imagination of what it would look like if we could make this work. We asked ourselves, what if we could turn a 30-day sign-up process to 30 seconds? We looked around the world and we saw if you wanted a government service in India, for example, you could wait 30 days and there were paperwork packed all the way up, or it would take weeks to open a bank account in East Africa during that period. Or we said, what if I could safely identify myself and my credentials in a secure way that without me going into the office and traveling on a bus? What if I could control my own giving out of my data and privacy and take it back when I didn't want to give it out anymore? And if you could imagine that world, you could think of a technology that wasn't just at the application level where many organizations were building, but much deeper in the digital stack. And in doing that, it unlocks all kinds of solutions that we can't imagine. Solutions we heard from Rwanda today, solutions we heard from the East African community. And the kinds of things that have been going out have been pretty dramatic. So we saw Togo during COVID, one of the most difficult times for a government to respond, go from 12,000 social development payments to, I think, 1.8 million, 35% of their population. For those of us who live in the US, how long did it take the United States government to get checks out to support people? You could take the example of India, where they were able to actually, they were on a pathway. It was going to take 40 years to include the financial inclusion numbers, and they did it in 10 years, going from 35% to 78%. Oh, and by the way, they closed the gender gap during that process. You've also seen a world where they cut India as well. 40% of leakage out of NREGA, which is a rural income guarantee program. And so as we kind of walk through that, the foundation said, can we do that? But once you include that many people, billions of more, there's going to be new dangers, new need for safeguards. And that's why we're really happy to support the DPI Safeguards Initiative, where it provides the right kinds of normative structures and governance structures of what needs to be done, how it gets ahead of the technology so we don't have vendor lock-ins and other kinds of situations where you're trapped in a particular economic model that may not work for your country. And then did something that we haven't done very much in the development space, which is created a space for civil society to come in. And in that, to understand what are the power dynamics and the visions of people on the ground, not just the visions of people in the global north. And so I think that the foundation entered this space because we think it's an unlock for global health, it's an unlock for global agriculture, it's an unlock for financial inclusion. But more than all of that, it's an unlock for the people who are included to leverage this infrastructure to build the kind of business model opportunities they want. And I have no idea what that imagination will lead to, but it will lead to things that would not have happened if we excluded them from the systems that work for us. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think Anna said it. The case is clear, actually, about why this is so important. And I like this framing of it's an unlock. It's an unlock for so many things. You're with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Full disclosure, you're Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a funder for our health work.
Okay.
But I'd like to ask you a broader question about philanthropy's role in general. If you feel comfortable representing all of philanthropy.
I don't feel comfortable representing all of philanthropy.
But what do you see as philanthropy's role then in the DPI safeguards and addressing digital security and privacy issues more broadly?
Look, I think that philanthropy has three kinds of roles generally in this space. I think one, because its cost of capital is close to zero, if not zero, it can take long-term bets and experiment in ways that it's really hard for others to experiment. We've done some of that. Some of that has been successful. Some of that has not been successful. And I think it's a risk-taking role. The second thing that philanthropy can do is it actually puts in place how we measure what's working and what's not. And so some of the statistics we've talked about today, where we've seen big impacts, are things that philanthropy have funded. But we've also seen things that, wow, consumer protection had not kept up with the pace of financial inclusion. There were women paying more for transactions than men were paying. Well, why is that? And how do we actually use that measurement to understand what works best and what are the things that should scale and what are the things that we should leave aside? And I think the last thing that we can do is we have an ability to have some level of convening and use that money to help things like the DPI safeguards to pull these pieces together. What we don't do, because we are not a sovereign entity, is decide how the world should work. And what we can hope to do is to use our funding as a catalytic way that unlocks other kinds of funding to scale things that we would never have that money to scale. So when we think of agriculture, we may develop new seeds. Goodness gracious, I was just in Ethiopia. They replaced in 3 years their total wheat imports. They did all the scaling. World Bank helped with the scaling. UN helped with its support. But we are really there to provide the initial catalyst. So thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This has been such a rich, exciting discussion. And so much optimism here. I think sometimes you see technology, it's really driving so many conversations, but when you add the political economy, you add the commitment to inclusivity, you add the focus on trust, it really gives a real sense of optimism to the entire agenda on the UN discussions today.
Well, and I would add just to that, I mean, we're here at the UN General Assembly. I see many people with a badge for the Sustainable Development Goals. The unlock that all of you in the room helped create puts us on a journey where the financial inclusion and some of the digital goals may be the ones we hit in 2030. And that doesn't happen without all the work that you all did in the room. And I think that's why we're excited about it, because there aren't many places we can point that out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's a great way to end this this panel. And with that, I'd like to just turn straight to the tech envoy, Amandeep Gill, for his final remarks, comments, closing discussion. Thank you. Oops.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. It works the other way around. Green is to go right. Yeah. So thanks, everyone. And this has been really a heartwarming moment for us. And I'm really, really grateful that we've reached here after 1 year's hard work. When the Secretary General proposed a focus on DPI safeguards in his policy brief for the Global Digital Compact, the challenge he gave us was, how can we be strategic about the digital transformation? So look around and see where will we get the maximum return for our efforts? So figure out those areas. And of course, DPI is one of those. Christina, you spoke about the political economy in terms of sovereignty over flows, which links back to the debt problem. But I would say, continue with that. Say this is not just about inclusion, it's also about costs. So the bang for buck. I mean, if in the developed world, Madhukar, you're very fond of quoting this, that the per capita spend on ICT infrastructure is perhaps 25 times that the developing world. So the developing world needs to be 25 times more efficient. So this is where DPI's magic comes in, that you meet the supply side push from ICT spend with a demand push and you lower costs. You see that in India, you see that in Brazil with PIX, and you see how the inclusion in the digital economy happens. And then, because we're talking about safeguards, Eileen, your point about values and governance. So at the end of the day, this is about governance. What are the kind of values we base ourselves on? And at the UN, for us, human rights are important. Freedoms are important, and well-being is important. So if DPIs work beautifully in terms of the political economy, but they suffocate individuals and communities, and then we are not going in the right direction. So I think this has been a key consideration. And of course, Roger, your point about all these excellent examples out there, where we see the numbers, 500 million people brought into the financial mainstream in India, 55% of them women, 66% from the rural areas, and you see 20 trillion rupees of transactions every month and going up 45% per year. So the evidence is stacking up. And I think we need a way to kind of bring all those success stories, but also challenges, because there have been challenges in India in terms of protection and inclusion. There have been challenges in the Caribbean region. Matthew, you have brought those examples into our discussion. So how do we learn from each other and use this framework to build a repository of knowledge? Most importantly, to develop a community of practitioners, of thinkers who can go out into the field, work with the country implementation teams, and take forward the safeguards framework and help advanced DPIs achieve their political, economic, and societal goals. And I do want to give a shout out to GIZ and the European Union, the work that you're doing in country that will be valuable for us. So that's why it's important that in the IOCG, we keep working with you so that this is informed. In a sense, the question about the role of philanthropies or development cooperation partners, I think at one level you have a standard that you can use to evaluate things to go forward. But at the same time, you can contribute to an updating of the standard. And I think that just improves the health of the DPI ecosystem. So thank you very much. Help us take this forward. And thank you, Roger, for the offer of support. It is very much welcome. And have a very, very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.